He chose stability. 5 years later, he had nothing left. Comfort is not a reward. It's a trap. You don't pay for it right away. You pay for it in small increments every day. Until one day you wake up at 39 and realize that all you have is coffee, a windowsill, and the question, what if I had decided then? One click and you're with us together until we hit our first 1,000. My name is Alex. I'm 39, and I don't understand where the last 5 years of my life went. No, I didn't become an alcoholic. I didn't run off to Asia searching for enlightenment. I didn't get divorced. I didn't get sick. I just woke up every day at 7:15, drove to work, and came home. Every single day. For 5 years. Stability. That's exactly what I chose when I was 34. I had a chance. An opportunity. Too risky, said the girl I was dating back then. Think about your future, said my father. You're not the adventurous type, added my boss. And I chose what sounded logical. A secure job, insurance, a schedule, and predictability. It wasn't a failure. It was a contract. It was like I signed an agreement with life that read, you won't suffer. But you won't live either. I didn't want to seem ungrateful. I knew millions of people dream of a job with a salary, an office, air conditioning, and corporate breakfast meetings. I knew I was lucky. But every evening, when I sat in traffic in the same exact spot, listening to podcasts out of habit, I felt like I was suffocating. Not from fingers around my throat. Not from fear, but from a vacuum, emptiness, absence. First year, everything seemed right. I moved to a new neighborhood. Bought the couch I wanted. Started running. Even began reading personal development books. Second year, I started noticing I'd stopped laughing. Not because I was sad, but because everything had become the same. Pleasant, smooth. Third year, I couldn't remember the last time I looked forward to Monday with interest. Or Friday with excitement. All days had become one big background noise. Fourth year, questions started appearing. Not from others, from myself. Is this really what you wanted? You dreamed of something different, remember? Who have you become? And then came the fifth. The one where I woke up and realized I had nothing. No company I had built. No book I had written. No woman I could look out the window with and talk about the future. No feeling that I had actually lived. You know what's the scariest part? I can't say anyone else is to blame. Not my boss. Not my girlfriend. Not my parents. This was my choice. I signed this invisible contract myself. I rejected risk, pain, failure, and along with that, I rejected freedom. But the most painful revelation came in November. I accidentally saw an interview in my feed with the guy who had offered me that risk back then. He was sitting in a leather chair, speaking confidently but not arrogantly. Behind him was the logo of the company he had eventually created. Without me, he had invited me into a partnership back then for 40%. I said no. Now he has 180 employees. And an office in San Francisco. And I have a windowsill and coffee from a vending machine. This isn't envy. This is a scream. The scream of someone who realizes he missed his stop. And the train is already far away. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm not asking for support. I just want someone who's standing at that same crossroads right now to hear this. Stability is an illusion. And if you choose it instead of your dream, you pay. Not right away, but every single day, in small pieces, until nothing's left of you but an empty shell. I started small, deleted Instagram, not because I was jealous, but because I couldn't watch other people's lives anymore, lives that had movement in them. Living life by subscription had stopped working. Then, I revised my resume. I was surprised to realize I hadn't changed it in 5 years. Everything looked outdated, not even in terms of experience, but in tone. Like I was speaking from another era. An era where Excel was an advantage, and knowing how TikTok works was inappropriate. Over the weekend, I sat down at my laptop and wrote a letter. To that same guy from the interview. Hi Dan, you might not remember, but 5 years ago you invited me into a partnership. I chose something else back then. And as it turns out, I chose against myself. Today I'm a marketing director at a bank that's been on the verge of a merger for a year. I'm 39, and I realized I don't want to be a spectator anymore. If you happen to need someone who knows how to not just analyze trends, but also survive in bureaucracy, let me know. Even if it's just for coffee. I sent it, without hope, just to prove to myself that I was still alive. 3 days passed, no response. On the 4th day, I started convincing myself that he wasn't obligated to respond. That he was busy, that maybe the email went to spam. On the 5th, a response came. Hi Alex, of course I remember you. Listen, it's interesting that you wrote. We don't have any open positions right now, but if you're ever in Seattle, let's meet up, chat. Maybe we'll figure something out. No guarantees, no specifics, but something ached in my chest, like my heart remembered what it felt like to beat off script. I took 3 vacation days and bought a ticket. When I walked out of the airport in Seattle, it was raining. But there was something symbolic about it. Like the city was washing away the remnants of my illusions. We met in the lobby of their office. A modest building, but inside, glass, concrete, wood. The air smelled of youth and challenge. Dan was the same, just more confident, and calmer. Well, you sure disappeared, he said, shaking my hand. 5 years felt like one day. I know that feeling. We sat in a conference room. I was expecting formalities, questions, skepticism, but he simply asked, "What do you want?" I wasn't ready, not because I didn't know, but because it had been too long since anyone had asked me that question. I want to go back. Where? To where there's risk, where there's a chance, where every morning isn't just part of a week. And what are you willing to lose for that? Everything that's left. He nodded silently. After the conversation, I walked outside and for the first time in a long while, I felt fear that doesn't paralyze, but energizes. He didn't promise me a job. He didn't give me money. But he said, "You're not too late. Just don't expect it to be easy." That same evening I returned to the hotel and stared at the ceiling for a long time. I understood that no one was just going to help me out of the blue. I needed to prove I wasn't just someone from the past. I took out my laptop and started writing a strategy. Not for the bank, not for a report, for Dan's startup. How I would build their marketing. How I would change their positioning. Where I would look for growth. I wrote until 4 in the morning. The next morning I sent the document. Without asking for anything. Just, if this is useful, great. If not, thanks anyway for giving me a chance to remember what it feels like to be alive. The response came within an hour. Fly out for a week. We have a project. I want you to participate. Not as a candidate, as a partner. Let's see if you can remember how to be alive again. I cried. Without sound. Without drama. Just because for the first time in 5 years, something was burning inside me again. I flew out a week later. I was met by an assistant, a guy about 25, in a hoodie and $800 sneakers. He was showing me around the office and explaining something, but I caught myself not listening. My eyes were scanning everything. Not the walls, not the people, my own obsolescence. Every face in the open space was someone 10 years younger than me who looked at the world like they were about to rewrite it. And I knew how to write reports. 2 people were already waiting in the conference room. They didn't introduce themselves, just nodded. One was the tech director, quiet, with an ear piercing and a code tattoo on his forearm. The second was Claire, product manager, about 30, with eyes that could cut through metal. "Hi Alex, we have 3 days for the concept. If it works, we'll pitch it to the board," she said. I opened my laptop, and realized, I didn't understand their language. Not English, theirs. They were throwing around abbreviations. DTC, CAC, retention spike, product market fit. I had my own vocabulary, banking, structural, safe. But here, everything was flexible. Loud, and bold. I stayed quiet, listened, pretended to take notes. Inside, my heart was pounding. "You're an old man. You're too late. They gave you a chance, and you're going to blow it." The voice I had silenced in myself for so long was now screaming. That evening I went out into the city and sat on the steps of an empty cafe. I didn't know what to do. Call a friend? I barely had any friends left. My parents? They'd say, "Come back. You'll find another bank job." Myself? I hadn't been listening to myself for years. The next morning I came in before everyone else. I opened the documents, started reading their previous strategies, broke down everything I could understand. Then, I sat down and wrote my own version. Without trendy words, without hype, just to the point. I didn't know if it would work, but I knew it was mine. On the third day we were pitching the concept. A room, a screen, 5 people, including Dan. I was presenting last. When I started speaking, my fingers were shaking. But then, I suddenly realized, I wasn't scared. Because now I wasn't speaking just to check a box. I wasn't selling a report. I was talking about something I believed in. When I finished, the room fell silent. And then Dan said, "I knew you weren't lost." After the meeting he approached me. "You're not the most on trend. Not the youngest. Not the loudest. But you're one of the few who speaks with substance. So what now?" I asked. He extended his hand. "Now you work with us. Project-based at first. Then we'll see. But if you're ready to forget how things should be done, welcome back to the living." That evening I sat in my room with a glass of cheap wine. Outside the window was Seattle, which I had called too risky 5 years ago. And now, it was the only thing that felt real. I didn't write to Sarah. We'd broken up long ago. I didn't call my father. He wouldn't understand anyway. I just opened my laptop and started writing a journal. I wrote the first line like this: "Today is the first day I didn't betray myself." 3 weeks later I was in hell. Just not the kind with fire and pitchforks. But the kind where you come to the office every day, and everything you do is wrong. I would suggest, they would reject. I would explain, they would interrupt. I would try to be helpful, and I'd hear, "Alex, we do things differently." I felt like a dinosaur in sneakers. A clown who had learned youth slang from a 2010 dictionary. On Monday they called me to a planning meeting. I had prepared analytics, tables, slides. They had a Figma presentation, memes, a couple of screenshots from Reddit. Guess what they chose? Not mine. At lunch I sat alone. While the guys discussed some TikTok trend, I ate chicken from a container and felt my self-esteem dying. Slowly, without noise, but irreversibly. On the third Monday in a row, I couldn't get out of bed. I just lay there, stuff scattered around me, laptop not charged, phone turned off, and only one thought pounding in my head: you didn't make it. Again, I had almost packed my things. Almost hit send on that email to Dan with the classic, "Thanks for the chance, but..." When my screen lit up, 2 p.m. team meeting. Mandatory. I showed up, silently, without hope. The room was quieter than usual. Claire was standing at the board. On it, a slide. Fail fast. Learn faster. She turned around and looked directly at me. "Alex, tell us what didn't work." But be honest. I froze. My whole body wanted to say the usual, wrong audience, wrong timing, algorithm glitched. But something inside me snapped. I don't understand your system. I don't understand half the words in meetings. I don't know when it's okay to joke and when I need to be serious. I don't know how to build community, I don't know how to speak Gen Z, and I have no idea why your marketer participates in logo development. I exhaled. The room fell silent. And then Claire said, "Good. Now tell us what you know better than anyone here." And I realized, I had an answer. I know how people read numbers when they have their last $200 in their account. I know what fear looks like on a client's face when they think they're being scammed. I know how to make a stranger's brain trust you. Perfect, she nodded. Tomorrow your task is to adapt our strategy for 40 plus. Build us a test funnel for an older audience. But you're not targeting them. Not yet. But if you're right, we'll start. The next day I did the best work of the last 10 years. No showing off. No Figma. Just clear, understandable, with the blood of the real world. 3 days later, one of the test posts had a center twice as high. Claire sent me a Slack emoji, fire, and then a message: "Welcome to war. You're finally in." That night I couldn't sleep. But for the first time, from adrenaline. Not from anxiety. I stared at the ceiling and thought, how little a person needs to feel alive again. Just one place where someone asks, "What do you know better than anyone?" and gives you a chance to show it. 3 months passed. The project I was brought in for took off. Nobody expected it, especially me. Now other employees would approach me, asking for my opinion, sharing their ideas, requesting feedback. Claire changed. She interrupted less often, listened more. And once she even wrote in Slack, "Without your insight, we'd still be spinning in circles." And that's when I started feeling the same thing I felt 5 years ago when I said no. Confidence? No. Doubt. Fear. Because now I had something to lose again. In the morning Dan texted me. Come by. Important. I walked in. He was sitting by the window. 2 coffees on the table. Have a seat. Something wrong? He nodded. Yeah, we have a new funding round. We're expanding. That's good? Yes. It means growth, scale, responsibility. He looked at me. And we need a CMO. Someone who knows the market. Someone who's already proven they can deliver. And? He placed a folder on the table. This is your contract. Full partner. Equity. Shares. This is what you wanted, right? My heart started pounding like on my first day in this office. But inside, something wouldn't let me relax. Like I was hearing, check before you jump. I opened the document, flipped through it. Everything looked right. Almost. In one of the clauses, a non-compete agreement. If I leave, 3 years I can't work in the same sector. 3 years, without the right to build something of my own. I looked up. Did you know I once wanted to start my own company? Yes, but you didn't do it. Because I was scared. Well now, don't be scared. Here you can fulfill yourself. And be part of a team. Or be not myself again. He was silent. And then he said, Alex? This is a choice. Everything just like you love. Only now you understand the price. I left the office and walked through rainy Seattle. Puddles under my feet. Wind on my face. And inside, war. You get everything. But it's not yours again. Or you go into the unknown again. But, with yourself. I sat in a cafe on the corner. Opened my laptop. And started writing, not a letter. A pitch. For my own idea. The thing I was afraid of. The thing I kept putting off. A platform for adults who got lost in stability. Who don't know how to change course. Who think it's too late. I wrote the name. Life. I didn't know if it would work. But this time, I didn't care. I knew one thing. I won't give myself away again. Not for money. Not for a position. Not for status. The next day I returned the contract. Thank you, but I need to find out who I am when I go alone. Dan wasn't surprised. He shook my hand. Godspeed. Alex understood too late that comfort isn't a reward, it's a trap. He came back, but not to replay the past. But to learn how to choose himself, even when the stakes are everything you've built. Most of us don't crash and burn. We just trade ourselves away piece by piece, for an office, for insurance, for peace of mind. And then we wake up at 39, with coffee, a windowsill, and the question, what if I had taken that chance back then? Don't wait until everything falls apart. Sometimes breaking is the only way to begin.